Hi folks, FoxxC here again with another episode of FoxxTales. I started this channel to talk about how and why we tell stories and the impact they have on us and the world around us. If this kind of stuff is up your alley, you should click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can find my new videos more easily. This video is part of my series of tips for writers, and I'm going to be talking about point of view and how it affects narrative distance, which is one of the most important and challenging technical aspects of storytelling. When you decide to tell a story, the very first thing you have to consider is which point of view you're telling the story from. This is one of the most critical literary devices that a writer has to work with. Establishing who your narrator is, their perspective, and how close they are to the events of the story is the first major decision to be made when writing a piece of fiction. We make this decision all the time because we're essentially telling each other stories all the time, but we don't usually do this consciously. For example, you might say to a coworker, "Oh, I got up late this morning and missed breakfast, then I went to the bank and the teller was really rude, now I'm behind on this big project." And you're just describing the events of the morning from your own point of view. You're not thinking, "Oh, okay, I'd better select the first person point of view to tell this story because I want the audience to empathize as closely as possible with the narrator." But that's what we're doing. As a storyteller, however, determining point of view is a critical decision that affects how you are going to approach your narrative and the type of emotional engagement you're going to elicit from your audience. The less narrative distance you have between the audience and the characters, the more emotionally invested the audience tends to be, while more narrative distance leads audiences to feel more emotionally detached from the characters. Charlie Chaplin once said, "Life is a tragedy in close-up, but a comedy in wide angle." The closer you are to the story, the more you feel attached to the outcome. The further you are away, the more you are able to realize the absurdity of fleeting mortal concerns in an unfathomably large universe. Manipulating the narrative distance of your story is a major part of the art of storytelling, and it's a skill in a writer's toolbox that takes some practice and experimentation to develop a feel for. Okay, the technical stuff. There are essentially three categories of point of view. That's not all of them, but for storytelling, that's essentially how it goes. First person, using the I pronoun. Second person, using the you pronoun. And third person, using classic pronouns like he, she, they, or neopronouns like je, ze, or fey. First and third person are the most common point of views found in contemporary fiction, while second person has a niche with things like choose your own adventure books, visual novels, and some styles of video games. So I'm going to be focusing on first and third person specifically in this video. I'd love to do a second person vid, but that's another topic entirely. So in literature, we also break the third person point of view into two subgroups, but we'll also get to that later. Okay. First, let's look at a practical example of how a change in point of view affects narrative distance. Right now, I'm talking to you in the first person using I pronouns, and I'm facing the camera to help make a personal connection with you as an audience member. It's close, it's intimate, and reproduces the feeling of having a personal chat with a friend.
Things feel very different when we're watching FoxxC from a distance, don't they? Almost as if we were a third person in the room, aware of the action, but not involved in it.
This is an example of a shift in narrative distance that functions more or less the same way in both film and literature. Manipulation of narrative distance can be a little bit different on film because of the flaws and features of the visual medium. It's harder to tell a whole story from a first-person perspective, for example, but the audience will accept a point of view jump more easily with film than they will with literature, like from one character's point of view to another. Anyhow, choosing one point of view over another is a trade-off proposition. If you tell a story in the first person, you can get your audience very close to the narrator emotionally, but you're limited to what the narrator thinks, feels, knows, and experiences. This necessarily restricts the audience from learning about the wider context of what's happening in the world your narrator inhabits, and any facts are filtered through the narrator's perspective, worldview, and biases. These aren't necessarily flaws of first-person point of view. If you understand how the POV functions, its restrictions become tools to manage the audience experience, by using an unreliable narrator, for example. You can get a wider context in the third-person point of view, and positioning the narrator outside the narrative helps the audience accept the veracity or truthfulness of the events being described. But you also run the risk of pulling out too far, getting lost in the plot, and alienating your audience from the emotional pull of the story, which is the emotions of the characters, their desires, and whether they're accomplishing them, all that kind of stuff. I mentioned earlier that there are two subtypes of third-person point of view, and this is where they become relevant. The furthest out point of view is what's called third-person omniscient. The narrator is all-knowing and all-seeing and is in the head of every character at once with perfect knowledge of their thoughts, feelings, and motivations. It's more of a classic style, but can be a very effective perspective from which to handle a broad, sweeping narrative, inject your authorial voice, and engage with the reader with digressions. Charles Dickens wrote this way, and, more recently, Terry Pratchett used this point of view to great effect in his Discworld novels, using it to generate a humorous tone and subvert the fantasy tropes that he was satirizing. Fairy tales, right? Like, once upon a time there was a prince and a princess and they loved each other very much. That's third-person omniscient. Then there is third-person limited omniscient, or just third-person limited, which strikes a balance between the first and third-person points of view. This is achieved by limiting the scope of your narrative to the experiences of one or several point of view characters and telling the story as though you only have access to their thoughts, perspectives, and general awareness. The best way to visualize this is like an MMO, like World of Warcraft, right? As a player, you play one character at a time, and you can only see and interact with what is in your character's immediate vicinity. You have a more tactical point of view than first person, so you can describe things happening around your character that they might not be as aware of, but you're still right in their thoughts when you need to be, right? Writers typically hone their craft writing stories in third-person limited with a single point of view character, as multiple point of views are more difficult to handle narratively and structurally. One significant benefit of third-person limited is that it's very easy to build tension by restricting the information that the character, and therefore the audience, receives, while still providing enough context to flesh out the world. If you do decide to use multiple POV characters, like in George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, you can develop dramatic irony and additional stakes by allowing the audience a glimpse of how your point of view characters view each other and the world from their own perspectives. And events, so you can set things up with one character or pay them off with another. Really fun. My only word of caution is to limit yourself to a single POV per chapter or scene in short fiction to avoid head hopping or jumping from one point of view to another, which is jarring to readers. I think that's it. There's so much on this topic of point of view that I want to talk about. I'm going to be doing some more videos on it. These are the basics of point of view and how they impact the narrative distance of your story. There is no right or wrong choice of point of view. These are literary devices. Tools to allow you to craft the story and audience experience in the direction that you want. Spending time familiarizing yourself with how they work and writing stories from various point of views will help you build your skills so that you can use these tools more effectively in your writing. I mentioned this, but I'm going to go more in depth about selecting a point of view character and the relationship between point of view and perspective in an upcoming video. So if you want to make sure you don't miss it, you should subscribe to the channel, and you might as well like this video while you're at it. If you have any questions about point of view or feel like I left something out, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching FoxxTales. If you like this video and you want to see more from me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I think I just said that, but whatever, I'm using scripts. If you want to check out some of my published writing, you can find my most recent short story, Blood/Magic, in the horror anthology I edit, /or/fic/gothic from Anomalous Transmissions. Links in the description. There's probably a graphic up around my head. I also publish a free monthly newsletter that includes project updates, writing tips, and my thoughts on the media I've been consuming that month. You can find a sign-up link for that newsletter in the description. You may want to check your spam folder if you do sign up, just to make sure that your confirmation, you sort them out of there so you actually get that newsletter. If you'd like to support my work directly, you might want to consider leaving a tip for me at www.coffee.com/FoxxTales or becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/FoxxTales, like these lovely folks. Patrons get access to early drafts of upcoming stories and my unpublished screenplays, along with the joys of supporting an independent creative and some other available perks like assistance with your writing. Thanks again, and have a great day.